In my last video on this channel, I did a big Jackson's art haul. So I'll leave that link down below for you to have a look at. And in this video, as promised, I'm going to be trying out the art supplies that I've bought. So these are mainly watercolour supplies. I've got some really exciting stuff to show you. I've got some brusher, which is a new material for me. I've never used brusher before, but it is so exciting to use. I'm also going to be showing you some granulating colours and some metallic colours and some really cool papers that I'm trying out as well, including black watercolour paper, and it's so exciting to use, by the way. I'll leave links to all these items in my description box. So these are from Jackson's Art, which is an art supply store in the UK. If this is the first time you've come across me, hi, my name's Lindsay. I'm a mum to 4 children. I've also got a little dog as well. I live in the UK in Wales. I'm a self-taught watercolour artist. I've been painting now for 3 years and I love absolutely everything about it. So on this channel, I share all things watercolour, from watercolour tips to beginners tips to tutorials that you can follow along with in real time. I also love to talk about my art supplies and my art studio, which is a small art studio in my bedroom. Let's get stuck straight into this video and I hope you enjoy it. I found these little paper samples on Jackson's Art, and this is a great way to try out new papers without spending a fortune and then not liking them. So the papers that I've got are black cotton paper, I've got some white watercolour paper and also some Yupo Heavy, which is a mixed media paper, and I'm really interested to show you that. So I'm going to start off with my watercolour paper and also my Gansai Tambi Starry colours, which are metallic colours. And I'm going to start off with trying some watercolours on this black watercolour paper. And I was really interested to try this out because it's 100% cotton and I've never painted on cotton watercolour paper that's black. And to start with, I was quite surprised at how vibrant the watercolour was actually coming out onto the paper. But a bit further on, you'll see that the transparent watercolour actually seeped right into the paper and you could hardly see it. Apart from this lavender colour, which is a Daniel Smith colour and it's semi-opaque. So it was quite vibrant, this colour, and I actually quite liked it. But the red that I popped down, and I believe this was quinacridone red, yeah, you could hardly see that at all. I'm going to try some white gouache now. So this is the Winsor & Newton Professional Gouache in white. And you can see that the gouache actually painted lovely over this paper. So it's lovely and vibrant. It's sitting right on top of that paper. And I'm really interested to try some gouache with this paper in the future. So watch out for future videos. Moving on to my metallic paints now, which is the Gansai Tambi Starry Night colour set. I love this set. The quality on these metallic paints are absolutely beautiful, and compared to some other watercolour metallics that I've tried, this is honestly probably one of my favourites, and these paints are raved about, so I will link these down below for you. I do have a little Amazon link for you, and you can see that the metallic paints are coming out beautifully on this black paper. Black paper and watercolour metallics go so well together. And metallics will always look nicer on a darker surface, so I'm really interested in ordering some more metallics so I can use my black watercolour paper more when I order it. Moving on to the Stonehenge warm white watercolour paper now, and this is a paper that I've never tried before. It's not 100% cotton paper, so that's what I'm used to at the moment. But I started off with using wood pulp paper and non-cotton paper when I was a beginner, and I did use that for a good 18 months. So this is a good one to try out, and I'm using my Jackson's Art fine liner as well. So this is a RIGGA brush, size 3, and now this one is the Winsor & Newton Cottman 333 RIGGA series, and it's size 1, so it's a lovely thin shape. The 2 riggers that I have tried are lovely quality. I can get some really good control with them and I do really like them. And then I'm using my silver black velvet brush, which is a little bit softer, and it's a size 1, so it's a lovely thin shape. And riggers are great for getting fine lines like this, for getting fluid lines, straight lines, using on animal fur, using in landscapes and all sorts. You can get some really lovely detailed work with these. And the control that I got from this brush is beautiful. I always go for silver black velvet brushes because the control that I get from them is amazing. And silver black velvet brushes are mixed with synthetic squirrel hair,
and synthetic fibres, so you get the softness of a squirrel brush or a squirrel hairbrush, and then you get the control from a synthetic. So the control on this brush is amazing. I'm trying this paper with an even flat wash now, so I'm using a small brush, and I was quite impressed by how lovely the paint went down onto this paper. Because this is a cold press paper, it's got a bit of a tooth to it, but not too much. Arches has got much more of a tooth to it and is a lot more rough than this paper. And Arches is a paper that I'm used to. So you can see that I'm adding a bit more to this paper just to test out how long the paper stays wet for. And then I'm going to drop in some washes to get some wet on wet technique methods going on. And I just wanted to test how far out the paint spread within the water on the paper, and you can see that it kind of looks like it's just sitting there. So I wasn't overly impressed with this watercolour paper, to be honest, but I will do a few more tests on this paper in the future. The next paper that I'm using is UPro Heavy, and I was really interested in finding out what this paper could do, because this is made by polypropylene. So it is essentially a plastic paper, excuse my frog in my throat. This is a waterproof paper and it's also stain resistant, so it's really good for lifting areas. It says that you can use this with a range of different mediums, such as watercolors, alcohol ink, acrylic paint, offset printing, whatever that is, I've never heard of that, debossing oil, pastels, graphite and silk screen. And what I was really interested in finding out is that this can be wiped free. So look how amazing this actually wipes up. I am using a baby wipe, but I wiped up this watercolour really well on this, and the watercolour did sit straight on top of this paper. It didn't sink in at all. So to be honest, I don't think I would use this with watercolours because it just kind of floated around on the paper, but it does say that it's suitable for watercolours, so I was interested in trying that. And then I used a pro marker over the top to see how well this would lift, and it didn't lift at all. And you can see I'm going straight in with the baby wipe and giving it a good scrub, and it just isn't lifting at all. So it doesn't lift with all mediums. I was also interested in trying this with a HB pencil, so a graphite pencil, and straight away I could feel how lovely this was to sketch on. I'd be really interested in finding out more about sketching on this paper and having a good try of that, because it felt so lovely to work on. And I'm just using my Mars plastic eraser that I got from Jackson's Art and using that to erase the pencil to see how well this erases. And you'll see that there is left behind a very small amount of graphite, which is very faint, so it didn't take off the whole of the pencil. I'm going to also try this with some gouache, because gouache is a medium that I'm really interested in learning more about, and I don't use at the moment, but I do want to use more. And it's because I don't know much about it, so I do want to have a little test on this paper to see how well it performs. So I'm going to water the gouache down. I'm adding a little bit of water to this, so it's more like watercolour consistency. And straight away I can see that. Can you see how it's leaving like little areas of paper? So areas of the paper are almost creating like a resist to the watercolour or the gouache. And I wasn't really impressed with that, to be honest, but this paint goes lovely and fluid down onto the paper. I was really impressed by how lovely and how lovely it feels to paint on this paper. But like I said, it does definitely feel like you're painting on plastic. So I wasn't really impressed by the areas of white being left behind. But this is a plastic coated paper, so that's what you can expect from that, really. And I just decided to take this off with a dry tissue, and it wasn't coming off completely, so I wet the tissue and decided to use some water on this, and it came up lovely afterwards. So all I'm doing is just giving it a light rub, and you can see how easy it is to take paint off this paper. So this paper would be great for students who are practicing. You can use one piece of paper for numerous amounts of practice work, so I love that this is not going to be wasteful. I would be really interested in practicing on this paper with a range of mediums and seeing what can lift, what works well on this paper, and also doing some practice work on this. I will make some YouTube videos on this paper in the future because I'm really interested in this paper. And my initial thought was, I just haven't got a clue. So my initial thought was, I don't really like watercolours on it because the watercolour just sits there and floats around. The gouache is quite nice to work when it's a bit thicker, so I didn't add too much water to this. It's got hardly any water in it, but it's not completely even. You can see lots of streaks within the paper. And now I'm taking my damp tissue, and how easy is that to get off the paper? I'm really impressed with this paper, how easy it is to lift. So like I said, I will do some future videos on this paper because I was really intrigued. And yeah, I think it would be great for students. It would be great for kids as well, because you're not going to waste lots of paper. You can give them some paint. Try it with kid paint, what's it called, like the poster paint, and see how well it is to lift before you decide to give it to them. But yeah, I think this would be great for students, kids, and any artist really, if you want to try this with lots of mediums. The next supply I'm going to use is Brusho, and this I was so excited to use because I've never used it before, and I only heard about it about a week ago. Brusho is pigment in powder form. They're water-based, non-toxic, and very easy to use. So all you need to do is just sprinkle a little bit onto your paper, and I mean a little bit goes a long way, so don't be wasteful with this. I was trying not to sprinkle too much onto this. And then I'm going to use my little spray bottle, and when you use the spray bottle, look how amazing that activates the paint. So this is great for using with watercolor paint. It's great for watercolor painting, stenciling, it's good for monoprinting and lots more things. But I'm going to be using it mainly with my watercolor paints, and I'm going to be using it in this way mainly, just putting it down onto the paper and letting it explode out into beautiful colours. What I love about Brusho is there's not one colour in each paint. So within the black there seems to be blues and browns and obviously black and greys and things like that. So I just love the explosion of colour and the different colour techniques that you can get, and it's a whole different type of medium to watercolour paint because of the texture and the vibrancy that you can get from this paint. I also decided to hold my paper up and use my water spray to really make that watercolour Brusho flow down the paper and just see what it could do. And the colours mixing into one another were so beautiful and vibrant. We didn't get any muddy colours going on. And then I decided to take the dry powder onto the wet paint as well and see what happened. And can you see how beautiful that is? You've got that dark inner, and then it kind of like spreads out and becomes lighter, and it kind of reminds me of fireworks or flowers. So I love the different colour ranges, and one of my favourite colours are this turquoise. Look how beautiful that is in the middle there, and also the black. So I do really recommend those two colours in particular. The next thing I'm going to use is by Schminker. This is a watercolour paint, and it's in the super granulating range. This is a Galaxy Pink, and I was so excited to get this because this colour kept standing out to me in videos. I watch a lot of YouTube videos like this on swatching colours and videos using all sorts of paint mediums and all sorts of watercolour supplies. So this was one colour that I really wanted to get, and can you see how beautiful the granulation sits in the paper? With granulating colours, the heavier pigments in the paint actually sit in the grooves of the paper, and that is what you'll see in there. Then I decided to get this Daniel Smith colour, which was something that I tested out on one of my Daniel Smith dot cards, and I loved this colour. So this is Luna Violet, and when I got it, this is more of a grey colour, but you can definitely see more of a violet tinge in this, and I love this colour. It's absolutely beautiful for creating shadows, for adding to all sorts of paint mediums, landscapes, portrait, animal. I can use this in so many ways, I know I can. And I was absolutely loving how well this sat on the paper. It goes down lovely and smoothly, and you can definitely see the quality on these paints. The next thing I'm going to use is a Pearl colour by Fine Tech, and this is in the Calyro range. I think I'm saying it right, I'm not sure. Do correct me though if I'm not saying this right, because this is the first time I've used these paints. And you can get them singular like this, or you can buy them in sets. So I'm deciding to get singular little palettes, little palette things, and then I'm going to get the actual palette which you can click the little paints into, and the palette is so cheap as well. So the plastic one was about £2.90 on Jackson's Art, and then the metal one, which was out of stock, was about £5.90 I believe. This particular colour was Candy Floss, and I love it. It's a beautiful sort of rose gold pinky colour, and you can see straight away that the metallics sit so lovely on top of black paper. So I'm using my watercolor paper again, and you can see the lovely pearlescent shine on this. So I used it on white paper and it came out beautifully on the white paper, and also the black was lovely as well. Then I'm going to be using aqua bronze, and this is by Schminke again, and it's a powder formed pigment, so it's lovely metallic paint. And I'm still learning about this paint. So what I learned was you can actually use a soft brush, pop it into your palette, because it is a powder form, you only need a little bit, sprinkle a little bit into your palette, and then when you add water to this, you can mix it together with the water. You can also mix it with other mediums, because you can use this with other mediums as well. So do read the facts on this. I will pop a little link down below for you. But look at that, that looks like liquid gold, doesn't it? How beautiful is that? When I put it down onto the paper, I could see that the pigment in this was actually floating to the top, and I was really confused because I was trying my best to sort of let it sit in the paper and to smooth it out. I was taking forever to try and smooth this out. And to start with, I was incredibly frustrated and disappointed with how this worked. You can kind of see that the water is sinking into the paper, but then the gold flecks on top are actually floating to the top of the paper, which I found was really strange. It kind of sits on top of the water, and you can see this more on the black paper. So I was really confused, and then I decided to go onto the Jackson's Art website and read more about this, and there's a lovely blog post on the Jackson's Art website teaching you all about the aqua bronze, and I'm more interested now in trying this with watercolors, because it says that when you mix this with watercolors, when you use it in watercolors, the gold pigment actually floats to the top, and that's what it's supposed to do. So yeah, I'm really interested in using this more in the future. Next, I'm going to be trying out my Mars Plastic Staedtler eraser, and to start with, I started off using this with a soft lead pencil. So this is a 2B pencil, and I just wanted to see how well this erased. So I love the fact that this is a thinner eraser, so you can use this on finer details. I would say that this is not the best eraser to use for like fine hairs, because the eraser, I would say this is probably about 1 centimetre in width, in diameter. So I wouldn't use this for fine hairs and things like that. I would get a different one, to be honest. But this did erase really well. I was really well surprised by how well this erased, and I'm using this on a hard lead pencil as well, and how beautiful was that to erase. It is really lovely to hold, so it's more like a pencil. And please excuse the frog in my throat. I had laryngitis a month ago, and my voice is still constantly croaky. I'm going to test out some of the watercolour supplies that I've showed you in this video now by painting an autumn leaf. So you can trace around a leaf that you found, but I do really suggest that you draw this by hand, because leaves, when they're natural, they curve up, and if you hold a leaf down and trace around it, you might not get a natural looking leaf. But I do find that by tracing around a leaf, you do get a lovely shape, you get the proportion. So I do actually like doing this for painting leaves, and all you need to do is just hold it flat and trace around the outline, and you can get a really good shaped leaf doing that. Then taking my large flat brush, I'm going to add some clean water all around the leaf. So I'm carefully going around the edge of the leaf, and this flat brush was actually great for getting into the fine edges of the leaf as well. And this was featured in one of my recent art hauls, so I will link that video down below for you. I'm going to take the Galaxy Rose now, the Galaxy Pink, and this is the Schminke Super Granulating Paint, and I'm just going to add that onto the wet areas of the background. So I'm carefully just going around the leaf with my flat brush, and you can see how beautifully this paint spreads out within the water, and it just paints so beautifully. You can definitely see the quality on this paint, and this was quite diluted, so I've added lots of water to this, and I'm just smoothing this out, and straight away I can see the granulation happening. So you'll notice more of the granulation happening once the paper dries, because once the paper starts to dry, the water will evaporate and the heavier pigments within the paint will settle down into the grooves of the paper. So if you want more granulation within your watercolour paintings, then use a rougher paper, so a cold press or a rough press. A rough paper will be really work really well. And I'm sorry if you can hear my little voices in the background. That's my little girls. They're off on their holidays at the moment, so they're downstairs with their dad while I do this voiceover. Now I'm going to be dropping in the Lunar Violet, and I'm popping this onto the wet areas while that paint is still wet, and you can see that that creates a beautiful shadow colour under the leaf. So I've added lots of water to this, and this is a granulating colour again, so there will be a bit of granulation within this paint, and I'm just taking a slightly thicker mix and just popping that right next to the leaf where it's going to be the darkest. I'm laughing at my little girls downstairs. They're playing on their iPad together. They are, love them. Now I'm going to sprinkle on the black brusho, and this is going on to the wet paint. So straight away you can see that that paint is starting to move outwards. When this gets activated by water, it kind of activates the pigment within the powder, and then it starts spreading. So there are a range of colours that I'm using here. So I was using some sandstone, which I absolutely love, and I used a bit of the violet as well. So those colours together went beautifully. Now I'm just adding some yellow. So this is the lemon yellow hue that I've got, and I'm just adding this to the leaf. And I'm just going to spread this all over the leaf. This is a time-lapse video at the moment, so I am speeding this area up just to make it a bit more entertaining. So I don't normally paint this fast, and I wish I did, to be honest, but I'm a really slow painter normally. Then I'm going to take the fine end of my brush, and I'm going to use this to get some veins within the leaf. So I'm wetting the leaf first with some clean water all over the leaf, and then I'm going to drop in some green. So I got this green from mixing cadmium yellow and ultramarine blue, and it makes this lovely sort of mid green, and I'm going to drop that onto the leaf, but I'm going to leave some of the yellow showing. So you'll see that parts of the yellow of this leaf will remain wet, showing through, and you just saw me re-wetting my leaf because parts of my leaf was drying a little bit, and I do want this to remain wet so I can get some lovely soft results. So I'm just painting this green all over, leaving that yellow underwash showing through. So that's why I popped the yellow down first, so that we can have that yellow shining through. And now I'm using some alizarin crimson, and I'm going to drop this into areas of the leaf. So I do want lots of that green and yellow to still shine through, so I'm only going to pop this alizarin crimson into areas. But once the red hits the green, then that's going to create more of a reddish brown colour. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm actually doing a voiceover at the moment, so I love watching the process of me painting and then doing the voiceover afterwards. It makes me concentrate on what I want to say better than having to paint and speak at the same time sometimes. So that's why I'm doing the voiceover. But watching those colours exploding on the page is so satisfying to watch. I'm going in with some thicker alizarin crimson now, and parts of my leaf has started to dry, and then I'm going to start using the end of my brush, and I'm just drawing in some lines. So once you draw those lines on the paper with the end of your brush, or a pen that doesn't work, what happens is that creates a bit of a groove in the paper, and then the paint starts to settle in that groove, so you get that darker line forming. And I love using this technique rather than using like a masking fluid or painting over the leaf with a darker colour afterwards. I love using this technique because it looks a bit more natural, and you do get a lovely fine line that way as well. You can always just leave your leaf to dry completely and then go in with a really fine brush and paint over the veins with a darker colour like an alizarin crimson or a burnt sienna afterwards, if you prefer to do that. But I really love using this technique. I always get really good results from it. Allow your leaf to dry completely now before moving on to this step, and then re-wet your leaf with some clean water. So I'm just smoothing that clean water all over the leaf, and the reason why I'm painting all over the leaf is because I don't want any harsh water lines forming. So if you take the water all over the leaf, then you won't get a stop, like a line where the water stops and that's exactly what I wanted, a nice even result. Now I'm going to take some of the Lunar Violet, and it's got lots of water mixed into it, and I'm going to drop this onto the leaf because I thought this would be a great shadow colour. If you have a look at the reference photo, there are some really dark brownish reds or some very purpley shadow colours within the leaf, and that's why I wanted to use this Lunar Violet. I thought it would be perfect. And the colours look absolutely beautiful because we can still see that lighter undertone shining through, even though this is a dark colour, because it's got lots of water mixed into it, and we've also put water onto the leaf first. We can still see those undercolours shining through. And of course, watercolour is a transparent medium. Transparent means see-through if you don't know. And I'm just going to drop that into a few areas. Because this is a granulating colour as well, you're going to get some gorgeous texture within the leaf as well. So that's why I wanted to particularly, I can never say that word. If you know me, you know I can't say that word. That's why I wanted to use this colour. And I'm just using the tip of my brush to add a few little specks here and there, and then painting on a bit of a shadow at the bottom of the leaf as well. So I love the fact that I can use all these items that I've showed you and reviewed and then actually put it into a painting. I would love to do things like this in the future. So if you really like this video and the way that I've painted it, please let me know in the comments and I'll make notes for more videos like this in the future. I'm just adding a bit of green to the tip of the leaf now because I just wanted to tidy up the tips of the leaf. I felt like they got a little bit lost within the backgrounds because they were a bit light. So I'm just darkening them up just to make them stand out a bit more. And then taking my alizarin crimson, quite watered down, I'm just going to paint down the stem. So I'm carefully painting down the stem, and I don't know if you can see, but I have done a little pencil drawing of the shadow, and that's to the right hand side. So I'm trying my best not to go over that. So I'm just going to paint the whole of this stem in the alizarin crimson, which I would say is more of a coffee consistency. And if you don't know the differences between my words and the water to paint ratios, I'll link my water ratio and water control video down below for you. So I'm just running that Lunar Violet down the right hand edge as well. It's got quite a lot of paint and not much water mixed into it, so it's nice and dark, but it's still spreading within the water. So this is getting painted onto the wet alizarin crimson, and then I'm using it even thicker again with hardly any water. I have blotted my brush to get some of the water out of my brush, so it's lovely and dark as you can see, and I'm just painting on a few shadows. I'm going to take my Lunar Violet again, very watered down, so I've put lots of water into this to get it very light. And I'm just going to paint this down the right hand edge where that shadow is. So you can see that shadow doesn't actually touch the stem. I love the look of shadows when they're not touching the item. So if you have a look at a leaf, you'll see that the shadow kind of twists off to the side. I can't really explain it, but because the stem is lifting off the paper or off the ground, the shadow is not touching the object. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Happy painting, and let me know how you get on with this. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future videos, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.